What's so busy about being a housewife?
My husband, Ken, scoffs at me, a full-time housewife. Joining in, my mother-in-law, Melanie, laughs and says, "You're just a parasite." It's not just Melanie who's barged into our home. On top of that, I've been saddled with taking care of my dementia-stricken grandmother-in-law, Holly, and instead of gratitude, they complain about everything I do. I'm also working hard to raise our daughter, and they call me a parasite. Fine then. I'll show you who's really in charge here. My name is Shelley. Every Valentine's Day, I buy myself chocolates and enjoy them. But this year, I ended up with a bad case of skin trouble from eating too much. At 40, it takes longer for these blemishes to heal. I'm getting old. No, maybe having pimples is a sign of youth. Yeah, right. Back when my skin was a little bit more youthful in my 30s. Ken came home from work with his mother, Melanie, and grandmother, Holly, and said,
Starting today, we're all going to live here together.
It's needless to say that I was speechless at his beaming declaration. What do you mean? I haven't heard a word about this. My tone towards Ken became unintentionally harsh.
Mom broke her arm.
Ken said, glancing at Melanie's right hand.
Oh no, I really did it this time.
Melanie laughed openly, raising her bandaged right hand.
You know Mom has been taking care of Grandma with dementia, right?
Yeah, I know, but as I had a bad feeling about this, I glanced at Melanie. With this hand, I can't take care of her, can I? She said with a smug look.
Well, unlike you, Shelley, I'm quite adept at handling everything. But given my age, I can't take care of her while injured. It wouldn't be fair to Mom either.
Oh boy. Melanie subtly but surely looked down on me, implying that I'm inefficient. I really can't stand this part of Melanie. Melanie graduated from college and once claimed she led various successful projects at a major company. However, in reality, she was mainly a receptionist who retired early to get married. She claims she left at 6 p.m. every day because she was so competent. But it's more likely because her job of serving tea ended when visitors left. On the other hand, I graduated from a vocational school and used to be a hairstylist. Melanie mocked that.
Such a path seems like something a not-so-smart person would choose.
When I later became pregnant and decided to quit my job to prioritize childcare, Melanie lectured me.
I balanced work and childcare.
If I had a job serving tea until 6 p.m., I could balance work and childcare too. Is that so? Though internally furious, I smiled and let it slide. I've been avoiding visiting Ken's family, saying, "Our daughter catches colds easily in unfamiliar places and haven't shown my face for the past 2 years." Ken understood, and Melanie seemed fine with Ken visiting alone, showing no desire to see her granddaughter. This way, I've managed to maintain a comfortable distance from Melanie. But now, living together, I held my head in my hands. If Melanie injured her dominant hand, it would indeed be difficult for her to care for her mother with dementia. I understand why she thinks our support is necessary. Unfortunately, I completely understand Melanie's point and the situation. But still, why did Ken bring them to our house without even discussing it with me? You know I don't get along with Melanie, right? I understand the situation, but you could have at least discussed it with me. I began to feel distrust towards Ken. Ken, on the other hand, said, "You're a housewife, so you can take care of Grandma, right?" Even though I'm a full-time housewife, I'm also taking care of our 2-year-old daughter almost entirely by myself. Yet, with Melanie and Holly already set on staying, having brought their suitcases, I couldn't tell them to leave. Reluctantly, I agreed to the arrangement and ended up taking on the responsibility of caring for Holly. I thought I just had to endure it until Melanie's injury healed. But even after her injury healed, Melanie showed no signs of leaving and continued to stay in our home. She left all the caregiving for Holly to me, even though it's her own mother. When I gently asked her to help with the caregiving since her injury was healed, she refused, saying she had work. Melanie's work is stocking shelves at a grocery store twice a week from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. She had adjusted her work schedule to accommodate caregiving, so saying she can't help because of work is just an excuse. She claims her boss values her highly and says she's indispensable to the company, but it's hard to believe they'd say that to someone who works part-time twice a week. Melanie's tall tales are obvious. Yet, she often tells me, "Unlike you, I didn't quit my job just because I got pregnant. Honestly, I'd like to quit too because of my age, but they won't let me because I'm so valuable," and laughs. Yes, yes. It's amazing to be a college graduate and an expert at stocking shelves. I feel like snapping back but keep quiet. Despite her self-proclaimed career woman status, she doesn't show any such signs at home. She always mishears things on the phone and doesn't know how to operate the DVD player. She even struggles with the TV remote. I doubt she can use a computer. She doesn't know how to use YouTube either. She hardly does any personal care tasks, or perhaps she's unable to. She leaves her clothes lying around and doesn't clean up hair in the bathtub, showing no consideration for others. Her conversations don't make her seem competent. After all, she graduated from the only private women's college in her rural area. It's fine if she stays with us forever, he laughs. In fact, he started to get angry with me for not wanting to live together, saying I was being too cold to his mother. Ken used to be a kind person. That's why I liked him. But ever since Melanie moved in, she's been pampering him nonstop. We had agreed on Melanie didn't want to do anything herself, so she also ingrained in Ken that a wife should take care of her husband and his mother. As a result, Ken stopped helping with even the simplest tasks like cleaning up after meals or taking out the trash, and he started demanding that I bring him his clothes when he bathed instead of getting them himself. Like Melanie, he began to make a mess of the house and wouldn't clean up, saying, "Cleaning is your job." With his increased drinking, he became more short-tempered at night, often raising his voice over trivial matters, making it hard to have a conversation. I tried not to anger Ken for the sake of our daughter's upbringing, so I rarely voiced my own thoughts. This only made Ken more arrogant, and he became a troublesome tyrant, all because of Melanie. Holly's dementia had worsened significantly since our last visit to her house, and she had become more aggressive, often using harsh language or throwing things. Sometimes, she would hit me hard on the head with her fist. Even witnessing this, Ken and Melanie would just laugh.
Grandma gets angry because you're inefficient.
When Ken said that, I was on the verge of tears from anger. Despite my daily struggles with childcare and caregiving, Melanie would ask me to rent DVDs for her to watch some old movies. It's already tough enough to go shopping. I don't have time to rent pointless DVDs. My sleep hours have significantly decreased lately. But if I honestly said this, Melanie would get angry and tell Ken, "Shelley was mean to me." Then Ken would scold me, and no one would listen to or understand my situation. How did it come to this? I was getting more depressed each day. I was reaching my physical and mental limits, One day, after Holly hit me, Ken got angry and said, "Why do you always make Grandma mad? You're really inefficient." I had simply wiped Holly's mouth after she spilled some food. Holly got angry, shouting, "Don't touch me." When I stopped touching her, she then said, "Wipe my mouth. It's gross," and hit me. I don't think I'm inefficient. If you think it's so easy, then you take care of her. You're just watching from the sidelines without doing anything. She's your grandmother. Technically, I have no obligation to take care of her.
Are you stupid? I'm too busy to take care of her.
I'm busy too. Ken laughed at me with contempt as I shouted with tears in my eyes.
What? What's so busy about being a housewife?
Melanie immediately laughed at Ken's words.
Just a parasite, right?
A parasite. Me. I'm doing all the childcare, housework, and caregiving, and letting you live in this house, and you call me a parasite. I won't forgive this anymore. Then from today, I'm quitting being a wife and daughter-in-law.
What?
At my words, Ken and Melanie looked momentarily bewildered. You mean you're quitting being my wife? Planning to get a divorce? You can't possibly do that. Ken laughed. I calmly said, "Yes, I'm leaving."
What?
Ignoring Ken's bewildered look, I opened the cabinet behind me. I took out a paper and slapped it on the table. "Divorce papers. Sign them."
Are you serious?
Ken alternated between looking at the divorce papers and me, gradually turning pale.
She's not serious.
Melanie tried to sound confident, but her voice was shaky. "What's wrong, Melanie? Worried that you'll lose your important caregiver?"
No, there's no way you can get a divorce. How do you plan to live as a housewife with no money?
"How can you even say that?"
Huh?
Ken seemed to realize what I was about to say and warned Melanie.
Don't provoke her any further.
"Did you know this house is in my name?"
What?
Melanie looked dumbfounded, and Ken held his head in his hands. "I inherited this land and house from my late grandfather, so we renovated it and moved in."
Didn't you say Ken built it?
"Yes, that's what he told you at his request."
What?
"Melanie, you think a man living in a house owned by his wife is pathetic, right?"
Of course, the man should earn more and build at least one house.
That's why Ken couldn't tell you the truth.
Huh?
When we had our child, we decided to move from our apartment to a house. Coincidentally, my grandfather passed away that same year, leaving me the land and house. So we decided to move there, but Ken hesitated. "I don't want Mom to criticize me for living in a house in your name," he said. "Melanie has an outdated view of gender roles, believing men should be masculine and financially support women. She's the kind who'd get angry at the TV over stories about couples splitting the bill on dates, calling them unmanly. At the same time, she claims to be a modern woman, saying women should be independent and active in society. If she found out Ken hadn't built the house and was living in one in my name, she'd undoubtedly belittle him. She'd likely demand we rebuild the house with Ken's money. Though we were the ones living in it, we'd undoubtedly face constant nagging. To avoid that scenario, we decided together to let Melanie believe Ken built the house."
I didn't raise my son to be so unmanly.
Upon learning the truth, Melanie looked surprisingly dejected, glancing at Ken with disdain. Ken, feeling embarrassed, avoided eye contact. If our relationship had been good, I would have defended Ken, saying to ignore Melanie's outdated views, but this time I had no reason to support him. "So, could you all please leave my house?" I said with a bright smile, and Ken and Melanie's faces tensed.
Wait. I understand if Mom and Grandma leave, but I'm your husband, and I haven't agreed to a divorce.
Ken resisted the idea of leaving. If he were kicked out, he'd either have to rent a place or move back to his parents' house. Realistically, moving back to his parents' house would be more feasible, but it was less convenient than our house, and commuting without a car would be a hassle for Ken. I completely understood why Ken didn't want to go back. Melanie also showed no signs of wanting to leave. For Melanie, it was likely the fear of losing her caregiver and having to take care of her mother again. "Think it over," she began to say. "No, you'll be leaving," I replied. With that, I started moving their luggage out to the yard.
Wait, wait, what are you doing?
Melanie protested. "It's odd to have other people's belongings in my house. I'm decluttering." Ken and Melanie tried to stop me, but I continued moving their things outside. Finally, I shoved Ken, causing him to stumble and fall into the yard. I didn't push Melanie or Holly, but there was a lot of shoving to force them outside. As I quietly closed the window, Ken and Melanie started shouting.
Let us back in.
In the chaos, Holly, not understanding the situation, was in a panic, yelling, "Play! Play!" while repeatedly hitting and kicking Ken and Melanie.
Help us, Shelley.
Unable to do anything about Holly's outbursts, Ken and Melanie just took it.
Please stop, Grandma.
Ken echoed, but I just smiled and watched through the window.
Ouch. Hey, stop just watching and help us.
At some point, Holly ended up straddling Melanie. Holly kept poking Melanie's forehead. Ken, not wanting to get involved, stood at a distance, trembling. "Melanie, weren't you a career woman? If you're so great at your job, surely you can think of a way to solve this problem.
What the?
Or are you just as inefficient as me?" I said with a sly smile, watching Melanie's face twist in despair as she screamed.
I'm sorry.
Understandably so, as there were gardening tools nearby. Anything could happen. But even if something did, it would be an accident. It's not my fault. I'm sure someone as capable as you can handle it, I said, closing the curtains. I thought about calling an ambulance if necessary, but I watched as Melanie yelled at Ken to help stop Holly's rampage. Realizing they had no other option, Ken and Melanie managed to get Holly into a taxi and went back to their own home. A while later, Ken and I got divorced. Ken was blamed for not protecting Melanie from Holly that day, and their relationship soured. Melanie even ordered Ken to take care of Holly if he wanted to live with her. In the end, neither wanted to take responsibility, so Ken ended up paying to place Holly in a care facility. Ken's burden increased further as Melanie told him, "You're a man, so you should pay," which only exacerbated their estrangement. Now, the two are completely cut off from each other. As for me, Ken still sends messages expressing regret and pleading for reconciliation, saying, "I was out of my mind back then." He wants to live with our daughter, but I have no intention of accepting that. I've made it clear that our relationship is limited to child support. That incident revealed Ken's indecisive nature and how easily he could be influenced to act domineering. I want nothing to do with such a person. No matter what happens, I have no intention of going back to the way things were. Indeed, being a divorced housewife was challenging at first, but with the help of my parents, I managed. I've even resumed my work as a hairstylist. As long as I have my skills, I won't have trouble making a living. I can live strong and resilient without relying on Ken. Besides, my daughter and I have a new addition to our family, leaving no room for Ken. Did I get a new husband? You guessed it. He's got pointy ears, whiskers, and goes meow. Isn't he adorable? It seems he cheated on me with the neighbor's female cat, and now we're expecting kittens. They're not mine, but they're yours, so I'll take responsibility and raise them. Just kidding. My daughter, I, and our beloved cat, Mr. Bigglesworth, along with his kittens, will continue to weave lively and joyful days together. Now, I need to give the kitties their homemade treats. Time to boil some chicken.